We're going to build this dashboard for January and then repeat it for February, but this time the repeating will go a lot easier. We're going to have a time series chart, and again, top 5 customers, top 3 salespeople, largest single order just for fun, and everything should update with this slicer. Okay, let's build it. We're going to bring in the data, similar to how we did before, except this time, when we get our lookup tables, we're going to do some transformations on it. So instead of just bringing in all of the customer table, I need, let's hit transform data. I need the customer ID. I need this column. I need the customer name. I don't need this column, so I'm just going to hit the delete key with those columns highlighted. And it's important to understand I'm not deleting the data. I'm just choosing not to bring in all of it. So I'm only bringing in the customer ID and the customer name. If I ever want to go back and get that information, it's still in the file. Close and load to, only create a connection and add it to the data model. And then you have what's called a query for the table customer. Okay, let's try it again. Get data from a file, and we're doing each one of these separately because I want to change each of the files in a different way. So on the table product, this time I need the ID, transform, sorry. I need the ID. I don't need the product name. I'm using the category, and I don't need the is chiller stock. So once I've got that transformed, then I can close and load to the data model, only create a connection. So notice that I've got those two, but nothing is being added onto the sheet. Let's get our next one. Our last lookup table is the salesperson. And it doesn't need any transformation. So I'm just going to go ahead and load to, add it to the data model, and only create a connection. Okay, now to get our sales data, that's the text CSV file. We'll get the January data. And I'm going to do quite a bit of transforming on this one. So let's transform. I don't need the order line ID, so I can get rid of that. Order ID, yes, because I'm going to need the biggest order. I need what customer, what salesperson, on what date, what product was it. Okay, quantity and price. What I really need is the sales amount. So if I can add a column, click on the price, and then just quickly notice that if you click on the date, this is not an available option, but date options become available. If you click on a numeric column, the date is not an option, but these are. So I want to multiply the price times the quantity. I can do a standard math operation, say multiply. That will take each row in the price and multiply it by, I'll use values from a column from the quantity. So 8 times 13 gives me this 104. As I do these steps, they're being recorded over here, and then they can be redone on a different file. Let me change the title. You can do that with a double click or with a right click. Change that to sales amount, and now I have a renamed column. And then once I've got the sales amount, I never actually use the price. You could delete this column and you still keep the sales amount. I always thought that was really strange when I first saw it. And then if you say, oh, I'm not sure if I wanted to remove that, you can just undo your remove step and it's back. Okay, so I want sales amount, and then I'm also going to want to get the name of the month. So from the order date column, I'm still on add a column, go to month, and then the name of the month. And I have a column that for every line, it just says January. Okay, let's go ahead and close this, load it into the data model, only create a connection, add it to the data model. Okay, so I've got these 4 tables, but I don't have any connection between them. And on our first dashboard, we had to do VLOOKUPs so that we could get the customer and the sale in the same table. This time, though, I can use this icon to open up Power Pivot. So here in Power Pivot, you can see all of the tables that you want, but right there, you can see a diagram view. You've got customer, product, and sales employee with the limited columns that we brought in. And then to create the connection, you're going to look up the customer ID over in that customer ID number in the customer table. So now Excel can pivot with any of these columns and with either of those. Same with the salesperson ID is the person ID here, and the product item ID, product item ID. Okay, this is the January sales. Close that down. The problem is that January sales is I'm going to do this for every month. So I want to rename this. If I right click on it, I can edit. And you have the ability to change the name. If I make this monthly report and then close it again, and once you've named it, it's going to give me a warning. If you rename this query, you're going to remove any connections in the data model. So let me show you what that does. If I go back to Power Pivot and I go to my diagram view and I refresh, let me refresh my monthly report. And now go back into Power Pivot in the diagram view. There we go. So it's a monthly report now, but the connections have been lost because the connections were tied to the name. So I'm just going to quickly redo that, just showing you so that if something ever happens, you'll know how to get your connections back. Okay, now I can start to build my pivot tables that I'll use on the dashboard. So let's have this be for total sales. We're going to insert tables, pivot table, and now you have the option to load from the data model. And now all of those 4 tables that we loaded into the data model, you can choose any field name from anywhere in there. So I'll choose the sales amount and I want the month name. So now I can get January and the sales. If I do equals in January, notice how when I clicked on that, it gave me the cell reference. But if I try to do that for this one, it gives me this whole get pivot data formula. And the problem is that January is hard coded into there, and that will cause us problems when we try to update. So a better way, select your 2 fields, copy, and then paste them in as links. So I've got the address and I didn't get the whole get pivot data thing. Okay, let me combine those. I'm going to want to create a box that says total sales for, it's text, put that in quotes, and then join that with the month, and then join that with a space, comma, space. Yes, you can use the concat function and then join it with that, but it doesn't have any formatting. So let me just update. When I bring in that value, I'm going to use the text function. In the format code, I put in quotes. I want a $sign, and then I want a number with a comma separator, and I want it to round to the nearest dollar, and then end your formatting. There you go. Okay, so this is not formatted, but this is. Then over on my dashboard, I can create a text box. And in the formula bar, have it equal and go get that cell that I created. And once it's brought in, I can click on it and update the size of the font and get the alignment, and then fill it and have the font in blue. And now we're ready to put in the time series chart. So I need for every day in the month, what was the sales for that day. I'll do this on my total sales page and put in a new pivot table. You don't want to have pivot tables that are underneath other pivot tables, just generally. Let's insert pivot table from the data model. Starting right there is fine. I need the order date in the rows, and then the sales amount in the values. Okay, and then analyze with a pivot chart. Change it to a line. I don't need the legend. Change the title to daily sales. Right click and then hide all the field buttons. Take the axis and format the axis. Display the units in thousands. That's better. And then this axis, excuse me, for the labels, I want to make it 5. Specify 5 units in between. There we go. That looks cleaner. And then cut that and paste it over onto my dashboard. We'll get it about the right size, and then we'll fiddle with it when we get everything else in. Okay, next. My top 5 customers, top 3 salespeople. Insert pivot table from the data model. Customer, I need all of the customer names, and then I need the sales amount, which is in the report. I want it sorted, largest to smallest, and then limit it on the value filters to the top 5. Format the numbers and currency. No decimal places. Nope. Number format, no decimal places. There we go. I don't need the total. It's not a big deal because I just won't bring it into the dashboard, but that's where you take it off. Let me label this so I can remember that this is the top 5 customers. And it's good practice to get in the habit of when you design on your pivot table to change your pivot table name. You can make this top 5 customers. Okay, next. It's a little bit faster if you just copy a pivot table and then you paste it over here, and then you have all the same value fields and you can just edit from here. So instead of the customer, I want the top 5, the top 3 salesmen. So put the full name in, have the sum of sales, needs to be sorted, largest to smallest, and we'll limit it to the top 3 with a value filter. And change the name. Top 3 salespeople. and change the pivot table name. Okay, now I need the largest single order. I want the date, the name, and the amount. Okay. Okay, to get the biggest order ID, copy this in. I want now the order ID number, sum of the sales amount, sort it largest to smallest. I want the top one. Okay, and now I need the ID number because that's how this is all connected together. But once I know the ID number, I want to know the customer name, like who ordered that. And then I also want to have the date. Let's try that in a column. Yeah, that'll work. So I can get the date, the amount, the name, and I don't need the ID number, I just need the info. Okay, let me rename this largest order. Okay, I want to take that information, copy it, and we'll paste it in as links again. And that was my date, but it came through and it lost its formatting. So let me format it again. There we go. Okay, on the dashboard, let's bring in our top 5 customers. Copy this and paste it as links. Can format the numbers. And put a header on it. And then top 3 salespeople. Format the numbers. Largest single order I'll bring in with text boxes, have better flexibility that way. This one, the name, and then just paste a couple more of those. This one, the date, and that one, the amount. One more for largest single order. And we'll start to do our formatting. Take the date, the same fill, shorten up the box. Put it in front. Take off the border. Okay, and then name. And align those. And on this one, I come back over here and I get the formatting. Then it comes in formatted, and I can move it. And both of these, I want to remove the outline and align them. Align the middles. And I think I'm okay with that. Okay, I'll take the outline off of this one. Top 5 customers, top 3 salespeople, largest single order. Let's remove the grid, see how we're doing. Okay, not too bad. We only need to get our slicer set up and a dividing line and get this. This is going to be a filter box that changes based on our slicer. So let's get our slicer put in here. Slicer has to come from a pivot table. Insert a slicer on the product category. And this table didn't have anything about the product in it. So it's not one of the active tables, but if you hit all, then you can bring up the other one, the other tables. Product group. Okay. Okay, there's my slicer. I want it to control. So I want to report connections for the top 3 salespeople, the top 5 customers, and my largest single order, which is this one, which I did I name that? No, but it's the other one on my top 5 and top 3. So if I change, looks like all of the connections are updating. I do need one other quick pivot table to get the sales amount for this. So insert from the data model. I want to have total sales, but I want it to change with the product that has been chosen. And that's a filter issue. So I'll put in the product ID number, product group into there. If I take my slicer and report connections, I have this new pivot table. Let's make sure that that's updating also. So the sum of the sales amount should change. Okay, good. Okay, let's take the slicer, cut it, paste it into the dashboard, and get it set up. Slicer columns, 7, come across. Okay, now on this one, I want it to look really clean. So this time I want to take this filter and not have it show up at all. So on my slicer settings, display the header, I'm just going to remove that. And now it comes with a border around it, and that border it's a little bit hard to get rid of, but I'll show you. It's actually the formatting of the slicer itself. So slicer, and then the format that I've got. I like the colors on it because it matches with everything on the table, but So I'll keep that. I need to make a custom format. So let me take this one and duplicate it and give it a name that's going to be monthly report slicer. Okay, and then I can go in and modify it. The whole slicer, the format, remove the box, and hit OK. So that custom format that I made now doesn't have a border around it. Then you just have to make sure that your slicer has that custom format chosen. Okay, let's put in our dividing line. It's a really skinny, narrow text box. It's filled with a nice dark blue. Let me make this box bigger. Let me widen that out. So that's going to be a problem because some of these names get really long. Need to make sure that the box is big enough to hold all of them. And then our sales amount. So one more text box. Copy it and paste it as a link. Format it. Okay, let's widen that out a little bit, and okay, let's test it out. Does everything update? Slicer settings are fixed. Okay, I'm not getting all of this in. Let me widen that out. Okay, and now that I've removed my filter button, if you want to get rid of all the filters, you have to right click and then you can clear the filters so that you can get all of it back. Okay, last thing. Let's get our queries back. So right there, queries and connections. Once we have this dashboard all ready, it is. That's for January, and then if I double click this and open it up, when I get the next data, I can go to the source and hit the gear button and just browse and change from January to February, and then import that data. It all comes in the same formatting. It goes through all of these same steps. We put in the sales amount, we put in the month name, and when I close and load this now, or close it, I should now on my dashboard get an immediate update. So now I have sales for February, and my chart changed, so the new data for February is coming in. All of the connections still work, but see the top 5 customers are different because it's February. So everything updated just with a single click of the button. If I go back into the source again, I could change it to point to March. And close and load. And then I'm updating the data. My name is not updated, but there's my new dashboard for March.